So James is currently a performance analyst at Warwickshire County Cricket Club. He is also an associate lecturer at University of Northampton. He was formerly associated with Nottinghamshire County Cricket Club and Surrey County Cricket Club, which are one of the top county cricket clubs of England. So this was an introduction of James, and I would not take any more moment because this is going to be something interesting, and I would really like James to take over the forum and increase that excitement of cricket because IPL is on air and so is our session. So all the best learners and grab whatever knowledge and insights because it's going to be interesting from James. Over to you, James.
Hi guys, welcome. Thank you for that introduction. I've got to try and encapsulate you all now for the next hour or so. Yeah, absolutely. I am the performance analyst at Warwickshire County Cricket Club. I've just joined the club. I joined in October, having worked at Northamptonshire for the last 3 seasons. And yeah, I was at Surrey Academy before that. I'll do a little bit of background of how I got into this role. The main aim of the lecture is to kind of give you an insight into performance analysis, the coding of the data, and then how we use it. And just as like a starter, to give you guys an idea of kind of what we do, and show you where you potentially could find your own career or pathway into cricket analytics. Because as I know, in India, it's a massive passion of the country. And it's probably kind of taking over the world by storm at the moment with the way that Indian franchises are, I suppose, taking control of cricket, which is exciting to see. And you look at the sales of the 100 and Indian franchises coming through. It'd be really exciting to see how that plays out in the near future in the next couple of seasons and what that means for someone like myself. So yeah, I'm coming up to 30 now. So I've been doing this for the last half a decade, 5 years. I did a degree in sports and social sciences at University of Bath. My degree was mainly actually around kind of sports development, the impact of sport in communities, sports health policy. And I will ultimately say I didn't know really that my job existed until I kind of got on my degree. And I thought, hang on a minute, that's something that I'm quite interested in. Like I'm sure lots of you are. And I kind of formed a career out of it because I would say cricket as a sport in terms of data and analytics is somewhat behind other sports. And we can go in and discuss why that might be for lots of reasons. But I suppose I was very lucky in the timing of when I kind of came out of my degree and where cricket and analytics was going in England, and kind of how I came about actually now calling this my full-time job. So I did my internship at Gloucestershire during my degree. My degree was a 4-year course with a 1-year placement. And that's where I learned how to code and how cricket data is created. And that kind of is the main bedrock of what internships are about, and probably where you guys can align yourselves is the coding of cricket. The coding of cricket is somewhat arduous and time consuming, but it's a necessary means to an end to get the data that we need to be able to assess performance. So I kind of split my job into 2 halves. It's the coding, but also the analysis. I'd like to be able to not have to code. And I suppose that's where you guys might come in terms of hiring people to code games of cricket. What I'll do is I'll show you the platform that we use to code cricket. It's something that you guys might have already seen before. It's called Play Cricket Scorer Pro. It's the same across lots of other countries. The owners of the program are called MV Play, and they use a company in India to code all of their cricket. So I'll share my screen now and bring that up. So this is what we get. This is opening Play Cricket Scorer Pro. And I will open up a game that is happening now live to show you what it looks like from my perspective. So Somerset are playing Gloucestershire in a pre-season friendly. And I could sit here from my computer now and code the game, but I don't have the video feed, so I can't do that. So I'm just going to click read only. And that's now going to bring the match into my laptop here when it gets there. And this is my coding window that I use. In the top left where it says add capture device, that's where my video feed will be coming in. So we code cricket usually with 2 stationary cameras either end. Very similar to the Indian domestic competitions like the Ranji Trophy. You guys probably just have higher spec cameras. We use kind of like security IP cameras that can go through all weathers and are quite cost effective, shall we say. And I'll explain how we go through this every ball. So every ball, I've got to record the ball. So record the video clip, click where I think the ball has landed on this pitch map here. I'll move my mouse over and circle here. Then I've got to click where I think the ball passes the stumps on this ball arrival. I've then got to click where the ball goes in the field, so the wagon wheel. I've then got to click foot movement of the batter, shot type, shot connection, delivery type, any events. So like appeals are a massive one because the umpires will also use this data set. And then also the scoring of the ball. So I've also got to score at the same time as everything. There will also be scorers in the ground, obviously. And every over, I have to check my score against the scorers. So we all agree that that's what's actually happened during the game. There are lots of scorers who are very much older than myself who fear that analysis will take over their roles and they won't be scorers. But the amount of times that I don't score the ball correctly because I'm too busy coding all the other buttons and I need their help to score the game correctly, you'd be surprised. So if you're a scorer, I wouldn't worry. But this has to be done in person at the ground. And that kind of brings me into my first segment in where you could potentially find your avenue into cricket analysis. There are lots of companies that are realizing that they need to code their own data. And companies like CricViz, companies like Cricket 21 in India, MV Play have their own coding database. And ultimately, we don't have a way of, I suppose, automating it yet. In the conversations now, we hear things like ChatGPT, OpenAI, I don't know, Grok on X. So many AI companies are coming out, but are yet to capture how we could work through using it in cricket and a consistent way of doing it. Because it's all well and good making it look really fancy and going, look how well this can track the ball. But the reality is that it's not 100% working all the time, and that's what I think a lot of people fear. So in terms of automating or getting sort of machine learning into our coding, the way that the ECB are doing it that have for the last couple of years, and hopefully when I click on a ball, I get the video. So this is what it looks like. We've got a stationary camera either end. This game is being videoed from this end. I can also see the other end as well when I click on the ball. So when giving videos to the batters, I will always show them this angle instead of behind the bowler's arm, because this is nothing like what they face in the middle. So I don't want to show them this. This doesn't really help them. Some of them are so used to viewing cricket like this, they prefer this angle. But a lot of them would much rather see videos of bowlers from this angle, because you get a sense of where they are on the crease, where their release height is, what they might, their wrist position, how they might be looking to spin the ball. In this case, Ollie Price is an off spinner. But yeah, so this is how we film and code cricket. So there is someone there. There is someone there clicking every button. And if you've got any question on that right now, please do just keep popping things in the chat. I can see the video is a bit laggy. Yeah, don't worry. I guess that would be the case, especially with my internet down here. In terms of how the cricket database is then used so I can access other competitions, I will share my screen again and show you the amount of games that I can access through here. See if I can find it. So here we go. So this is our database that I have access to as a county cricket analyst. So you can see I get women's games. I can get the IPL. So again, I can click on the match center and every ball has got an underline. That means that there's a video behind it. So I can see all the scorecards. And this is what lots of coaches and players will access the video from. It's very simple. It's on a browser. We don't have an app for it, which I think is potentially where MV Play could take their products. But yeah, I could go back all the way as far back to 2012. I'm not going to, because that would take so long to scroll through. But if I wanted to see, I don't know, SA20, I will then find the date. So that started in January and it went just into the first week of February. I can then filter by competition. And then here are all the games of the SA20. The ECB, because it's on British TV through Sky, I can then get the video. So I can click through and then video will play. I know it's very laggy and jumpy, but I will just show you that's how we get all of our video through. And that's all powered by the analyst. There's somebody saying they can't hear anything. That's a bit worrying. I'm hoping you guys can still hear me.
Yeah, actually, James, the attendees would not be able to speak. They would be asking questions in the Q&A.
Cool, no problem. So that's how we get our coding and our cricket database. So the analysts are the one creating it. The biggest thing at the moment, when you go back to this coding window here, and the frustration, I think, and it's the reason what we need to improve rapidly, is there is a human clicking where they think the ball's landed and where it's past the stumps. Now, that only happens in county cricket because there's not enough money to pay for Hawkeye through the T20 Blast that we play, and all of our county championship in our 4-day format. So we have to use humans. We're trying to find ways around that. So one piece of technology that Hawkeye are developing over the last couple of years is putting a GoPro on an umpire, and then that creates a video clip and Hawkeye getting ball tracking from that. And that is a much more cost-effective solution than paying for Hawkeye, because Hawkeye to install into a ground like Edgbaston where I work is £250,000. I don't know what that is in rupees. Sounds like a lot, but £250,000. So counties can't afford that right now. So the ECB are trying to create this project with Hawkeye, and it's called iHawk, where there's a GoPro on the umpire's chest, and every time I click to record a video clip, that triggers the GoPro to start recording at the same time over the internet. It's a brilliant piece of technology. However, we're seeing actual tracking percentages of around 50%, because if the bowler follows through and covers the ball, it can't track. If the umpire alignment of the GoPro is not good enough, it can't track. At the moment, we're seeing if the ball is too full, so a full toss, the GoPros can't track that ball because there's no bounce, which is a bit silly, and I find that quite difficult to understand, but that's where we're at with the ball tracking in English county cricket. Hopefully, I'd love to say one day we get full ball tracking in the next couple of years, because that will completely change our data set, because at the moment, as you can see with a human clicking where the ball lands and where it goes past the stumps, we're just guessing, quite frankly. And we've done lots of tests to see how accurate we are as analysts around the coding. And on average, we're usually around a meter out on length, which is quite a lot when you think about it. And we're also around 30 to 50 centimeters out on the ball arrival, which is less than the lengths, I will say. I think we're better than that. But as you can see, when we go back to the videos, if you've got a camera that's very low, it can be hard to see, or if it's a camera that's very high, it's very hard to judge the length. But that's the reality where we are as a game. And if you are thinking of wanting to pursue a career in analytics, I would say that coding is a really good starting place, and it's where I started. And it's how I got into the industry, and it allowed me to develop the relationships and the be in the conversations around getting a full-time job and having the experience, because working professional sport is difficult. It's a reality. It's very demanding. It's very high pressured. And I would say that when I'm looking to hire someone, I'd like to see on their CV or their resume some sort of experience working in professional sport, because understanding the environment that you're working is really crucial to how effective you are in the game. So that's our coding. We then, all those coded balls get put into a spreadsheet. And so every ball of cricket is a row in Excel. And I'm going to show you a cricket data set. So I'm going to get up last year's IPL, because I know that might be quite prevalent. And I'll show you how the data is structured and how we get our data sets. So this is 2024 IPL. I've downloaded every game. So this has got every game of the IPL. And this is our ball by ball data set. So you can see the match on the left here. You've got the date, the start time, the innings, over ball, the batter that's on strike, the bowler, the runs, extra runs, bowler extra runs, and the columns keep going. So you can see where the data comes through in terms of line length, shot, feet, the connection, and then wickets, appeal type if there's a referral. Then we're starting to get the wagon wheel data as X and Y coordinates, and then the arrival X and Y data here at the top is our ball arrivals. And because it's an IPL game, that'll be with Hawkeye. And then this tells us if the bowler is around the wicket or not. This tells us if the keeper is up or not. And then field events. So who fielded the ball, what sort of fielding, and the fielding position. We don't really use fielding data enough, if at all, at the moment, and it's something that we need to get better at. The idea of having maybe a run saved or lost metric would be really interesting. I know there are certain analysts that prioritize that over the kind of batter and bowler metrics because their coaches want that more. Then running along across the data set, we've got things like batting hand, the bowler type, who won the toss, and it's on every ball. And I'll explain why that's important. It's on every ball. And then we've got who's the non-striker. And then there's some other metrics, things like cumulative team runs. So what score? So things, if I could tell through my data visualization how many runs had been scored at that point, that's really important. The wickets, the batting position of that batter, the power play, whether it was which power play it was, if it was 1 day cricket, so 1, 2, or 3. The day, which is important for 4-day cricket, and the session. We've also got things like umpire. So because the umpires use this data set, I know the umpire manager will use this data to look at the effectiveness of his umpires, where the game was played. And yeah, as you can see, there's lots and lots of metrics, and we're getting better at adding more metrics across the data set. When I started in 2019, that we had nowhere near this amount of metrics on our data set, but it shows how the ECB and the company MV Play are exploring. We're trying to get more metrics alongside it to enable more detailed analysis. So that's our data set. Now, the biggest thing in cricket that annoys me is that it's really hard to get access to those. And that's okay because it costs a lot of money to create those data sets, right? Cricket 21, if you're in India, or MV Play or the ECB, I hate to think pay thousands, if not millions, to create that data set. And they don't want to give it away too easily. So the ECB know when I log on to MV Play, and they'll track the country and say my login is used in, I don't know, West Indies, and they know that I haven't traveled to the West Indies that day. They will just block access immediately, and they have someone looking at that login every day. And it happens quite a lot when coaches who work in the English county game then go and use their MV Play login because they're working for, I don't know, Dubai Capitals in the ILT 20. They get blocked instantly, and rightly so, because the Dubai Capitals should be paying for their own analysis software. They shouldn't be using the ECB's analysis software, but that's the reality of where we are as a sport. And when I made the comment that cricket is a bit behind other sports, I would say somewhere like football or rugby, you can get access to the data sets much easier. If you would like to look at your own cricket data sets, there was a point in my career where I couldn't get access to certain franchise leagues. So I would have to use a website, and it's called CricSheet. So I will show you this website because it's really important. This is the link here, cricsheet.org, and then you go /downloads, and you've got to go right to the bottom where you can see all these leagues, and these are CSVs, so the same data file format that I showed you just now for the IPL, and you can click, I don't know, let's look at the Caribbean Premier League new, and I will download a whole zip file of all the Caribbean Premier League ball by ball data. Now, the data set will not be as in-depth as the one that I showed you just now. The data set will be far more watered down, so it won't have lines and lengths. It will basically be scorecard data, but I think you can still do a lot with that, and I'm going to show you how you can still do a lot with that, in a sense that we can do things like recruitment just from scorecard data. We don't need lines and lengths. It obviously adds to the whole thing. I will put a link to that website here. I've just put it in our organization chat. I can put it in the Q&A here as well. So that's the website. Hopefully you can all see that. And you've got to go right down to the bottom for the CSV, because the other file formats are YML or JSON. I don't use those, so I just use CSVs. And so now we've spoken a lot about coding for the last, I don't know, 20, 25 minutes. And I suppose that's where a lot of you guys will be interested in. But that's kind of half my job. And I think now with the way automation and AI could be going, if you can only code cricket, you're going to be out of a job soon. So that's where I've had to learn a lot of skills around analytics and actually, right, now that we've got the coding and we've got the data set, what do we do with it? How do we drive insight? How do we drive decision making? How do we help players get better? And I use Tableau for that. Now, there are other programs available like Power BI, Google Looker Studio, but I've become very comfortable with Tableau. It's what I started on, and now I do everything through Tableau. I try and find a way to do everything through Tableau because I find it's a really intuitive and a really easy way and a fantastic visualization product. In a sense that I think I would say that the visuals look better on Tableau than they do on something like Power BI. That is very subjective. There might be lots of Power BI users on this call right now, but I prefer Tableau. But you can get the same output on Power BI or Google Looker. So that's what I will say on that. So I'm going to share my Tableau screen and I'm going to do some analysis with you live in front of you, because I think that's really important than me just showing some dashboards and saying, look how amazing this looks, right? So here we go. So this is I've opened up Tableau, and then I'm going to start with a fresh data set. So I'm going to find that IPL from last year. You probably can't see this bit, but I'm just getting the file. So we've got the file here and we're at a new worksheet. So if I was to, a coach has asked me, can I have a list of the best batters in the IPL from this year? I'm going to get batter and bring it onto rows. I'm then going to get runs. And we're going to add sum of runs. I'm then going to sort it from highest to lowest. Funnily enough, Virat Kohli on top from last year. Now, this is a stat. So I have a real issue with stats in cricket. I think there's a lot of people that show stats instead of analysis, and this doesn't really help us. We haven't really filtered it. There's just a list, right? So another way we could make this a bit more colorful is if we added batting strike rate, because that's some really big drivers to batting success in T20 cricket. So I've got to create that as a calculation. So I'm going to call it batting strike rate. I'm going to do sum of runs divided by count of the ball. I'm going to put that in brackets. And then I'm going to times it by 100. I'm going to bring that onto color. I'm going to change my color scheme, because usually I go red is bad, green is good, yellow is in the middle, just like a traffic light. And it's amazing how effective that is. I'm going to set my thresholds. So I'm going to choose 160 for being really good. I'm going to choose 130 for being okay. I'm going to choose 100 as a red. Okay, so that helps us a little bit. We start to get a flavor of what's really happening here. And we can start to see, okay, well, look, Travis Head scored 567 runs with a strike rate of 185. But Sanju Samson was 534 at 144. Now that strike rate is massively different. So not only is Head above in runs, but also the strike rate. So things like this, we can start to color. I don't like lists. I find lists really hard because it's really difficult to kind of see and get a sense of the data set. And so one way we could create a much better visualization for our coaches is doing a scatter graph. So I'm going to bring sum of runs again back onto our rows here. I'm then going to bring batting strike rate here. So we've got a scatter graph. I'm now going to bring batter onto label. And now we've got a much better idea around the nuance around T20 cricket. So we've got a lot of zeros here. So we want to try and filter our data. So we could do filter on a minimum amount of balls. So I'm going to bring ball onto filter. Count at least, let's say 50 balls. So that takes out a lot of the 9, 10s, 11s. Okay, perfect. So I'm now going to edit this axis. Here we go. Take out 0. Same with batting strike rate. And so a way that I might work with coaches is, this is okay. And you'll start to see some very big names, things like Fraser McGurk, Abhishek Sharma, Travis Head, Virat Kohli are top right. I will then look to add in average lines. So a lot of the time I'll speak with coaches and I go, the best batters in this graph are top right. And funnily enough, from last year, Pooran, Klaasen, Narain, all of these guys. Then the coaches might say, well, hang on a minute, can you show me openers? So then I'll bring up batting position because I know that's in my data set. I'm going to click show filter. Because it's a number, Tableau thinks it can add it, but we never want to add batting position. So I'm going to make it a dimension, and then it starts to understand. And then going to click show filter. So 1 and 2 openers. Okay, so here we go. So if I was an analyst and someone had to make a decision between, I don't know, David Warner or Johnny Bairstow as an opener, you could argue that Bairstow is a much better pick because he strikes higher and scored more runs. Now, potentially you could think of lots of ways to critique that, and that's absolutely fine. In the sense of what other things you could add a minimum number of innings as well. So to get that, I've got to create a couple more calculated fields. So I've got to create a distinct match field. So that is string of dates plus match. So that tells me which individual date and match it is. And then I've got to create distinct innings. As you can tell, so that's distinct match plus string of innings. And then associated with a certain batter. So distinct innings batter. So distinct innings plus string batter. And then because that now on the data set has a distinct innings batter on every row in Excel, I want to count distinct that. And then we start having a range. So let's say at least 3 innings in the IPL. So it hasn't filtered much. What if we said 5 innings? Okay, we start getting a bit of a more of a flavor of who the best openers are. And I think this is a really good starting point for analytics in terms of showing data to coaches and the people that I work with a lot. Because me sending them a spreadsheet with the ball by ball data or a table doesn't allow them to get a flavor of where batters are in the nuance of how they performed. And also cricket is never described by one major golden metric, because if it was, we'd all be using it. If there was one amazing metric that summarized everything around batting, then we'd use it. But unfortunately, it doesn't exist. So usually cricket performance is the relationship between 2 different metrics. And we could do batting average here. So now that we've got our innings field, I'm going to do, I use runs per innings because Tableau doesn't know if the batter is not out or not. So I do sum of runs divided by count distinct innings batter. So the number of times that they batted. So I'm going to bring that in instead of runs. Okay, now we're getting a bit of an idea. So that I prefer runs per innings in white ball cricket because I think average is skewed too much by not outs. And we don't care if they're not out, they run out of balls. So runs per innings, in my opinion, is a much better metric. Especially, so when I was at Northamptonshire last year, Ashton Agar, the left arm Australian spinner, had an batting average in T20 as at 46. But he's never going to usually get the chance to hit 46 runs every time. So, but if you put his runs per innings value in, it would be 13. And that's more of a flavour. Ashton had to usually hit 13 off 3 or 4 balls. And so that gives us a much better flavour. So that's why I use runs per innings. It's the same as if, again, we can filter to the period of the game because there's lots of openers, especially against spin, that look much better in the power play compared to the middle overs. So to get that filter, I'm then going to create a group of over. And I'm just going to create our 3 main phases of the game. So power play, middle overs, and then death. So then I can now bring in to show the filter. So if I was just looking at the power play only and you take out and then you start to see, okay, well, hang on a minute. Fraser McGurk changed rapidly here. You look at where head is in the middle overs compared to power play. Well, hang on a minute. We're now starting to get an idea of what they're like in different phases of the game. And this is so simple, right? This is what we'd expect an analyst to do, but you'd be surprised how many people probably don't filter their data like this and just go, well, his average and strike rate in T20 cricket is this. And that's the sort of stuff that I have to work against with coaches a lot of the time. We could also filter to bowler type. So I'm going to create another group on here. So I'm going to get seam and spin. So I'm going to select all my perfect. So here we go. I'm going to show filter. I'm going to bring in all our overs. So we're back to here, the openers. And then we can see just against seam. And then we can see just against spin. We could also bring that onto label. And then we can start to see the difference. So if I was going to highlight a batter and I want to look at head, we'll look at the difference between seam and spin. And you'll start to see a trend, how much better batters perform against seam compared to spin. Yet the IPL is a spin heavier competition because of the wickets in India. So we're just playing around with, right, if we know that we've got Travis Head opening for one end, we'd also like the best spin hitting opener to match that. So then you can start to see, well, that's why Head and Abhishek Sharma are so good together, because from last year's data, Abhishek is the best opener against spin, and Head is one of the best openers, if not the best opener against seam, because of his runs per innings and his strike rate. So that's why they work. Not only do they are incredible cricketers, but that's why they're such a good, I suppose, balance. You've got Head to hit the seam, and I'm not saying Abhishek Sharma can't hit seam, but Head can hit it just slightly better. And then you've got Abhishek, because Head can just basically think, right, all I've got to do is get my partner back on strike because I know how good he is against spin. And that's kind of the bare basics of how cricket has come from coding, using the data, and then driving insight into how or why certain batters get paired together. We could also do matchups. So if we put bowler type on rows, we'll put it on group to make it look a little bit nicer. And we'll put, we'll group it together. The seam versus spin. We're going to go in batter. So if we were going to plan matchups for a certain batter, let's look at Travis Head again, as we've just been talking about him. So I've just filtered to all balls that Travis Head faced in the IPL last year. I'm then going to click sum of runs. Bring it onto label. Count of ball. I'm then going to bring batting strike rate. I'm going to format that so And then also I'm going to bring batting strike onto color using my same color scheme that I did on that bar chart to start with. Red, green, gold. Again, same thresholds. 160, 130 to 100. I'm going to change that to square. So just by looking the small sample size from last year, Travis Head versus left arm spin, look at his strike rate compared to the other two types of spin, right arm. So that could be a matchup that you might use, but you've also got to take into account that actually that's a small sample size. If you're going to bowl seam, the strike rate is much lower. We could also bring in wickets. So let's bring counter wicket in as well. I'm going to filter just bowler wickets as well. So on the right-hand side, take out, run out, and obstruction. We don't want that changing our data set. And then I could also label this. So show it like a scorecard. So runs next in brackets balls. I'll put SR, wickets. I'm tired of it so you can see it all. And now we're starting to get, and this is a matchup sheet that I could bring in. So if I knew that I was working for an IPL team and I removed this filter of batter, and I'm going to bring in batting team instead, I'm going to show that filter, and we're going to play Chennai Super Kings tomorrow. I'm then going to bring, I've filtered that batting team out. I'm going to bring batter onto rows, right? And I know that I want to filter to just a power play matchup. So captains love this. So I'm going to click show filter and just power play. So if, say for example, we can change up the order as well, just so we know kind of where batters might bat. In the power play, and if Rahane is in, you getting spin on might be a really good, I suppose, strategy because he's poor against spin compared to seam. You can see his strike rate against seam is not as good, but you can tell how the color scheme matters so much in terms of getting people to look at the certain bits that they want. And I might give this sheet to the captain before a game so he can plan and make a nice strategy against a certain batter. It also depends on a lot of it. I suppose, especially at a team like Warwickshire, we're not going to have a massive option of 4 different types of spinner or 3 different, left and right arm seam. But if you're an IPL franchise, you can find those options. So sometimes I might, if we don't have a right arm leg spinner in our team, I'm not going to show that matchup because that's pointless information. But it also might not be because it might be a trend that spin away to a certain batter might be really useful. So again, it's depending on how you phrase it and use these analytics. So that's me done really with cricket analytics, and my 45 to 40 minutes is up. I suppose I'm now going to open the floor to questions and see how we go.
One of the most common questions that we are getting here is, how do you suggest that people pursue this career into cricket analytics? What are the prerequisites for this? What knowledge they would require? And if you could suggest, if any opportunities, or if you would know in India how to go ahead with it, or in foreign countries also, because that's a very common question people have.
So I think the biggest thing is I'd start coding for a cricket analytics company. So last year when I was at Northamptonshire, I had a young man from Chennai fly all the way over to England to do a master's in sports performance analysis at Loughborough University. And that course said that he had to get an internship. So that allowed me to give, his name was Yash an internship at Northamptonshire, and he helped with all my coding, and I taught him how to use Tableau and cricket analytics and kind of give him the starting block with that. I think the best way of getting involved in it is coding to start. And that could be in India, Cricket 21. I think there's a company called Sports Mechanics. And I just inquired to see if they've got any jobs, because the game of cricket is ever evolving. There's new competitions, it seems like, every week. People need data sets created. I also think that if you're working in one of those companies, you can then get access to the data set and start having a go at analyzing it. Because as I said in this presentation, that the access to these data sets is sometimes the hardest bit, but using Cricksheet, things like that, can be the starting block. And I think now we're getting to a point where I'm hiring people who have had some experience of actually analyzing data and not just saying I really like cricket, where I think when I started that was the main prerequisite. But now I'd like to see a body of work that people have done to show me that they've got some knowledge around cricket analysis and understanding the data set and understanding how to use that data. So I think right now, if I was a young person or a person in India looking for a job in cricket, I would start looking at the cricket analytics companies and saying, I can help you code, and then move through from there. That's the best starting block. Oh, I can't hear you. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
That's right.
So I think this was really insightful for them, because all our learners, they have this love for cricket, but they are not aware of the scope, how to go ahead with this, because this is something very different. I think that has helped them. Okay, James, I'll go with the next question. So I think this is one important one. So what are the most critical metrics used to evaluate a player's performance, and beyond basic stats like average or strike rate? So what would you suggest are the most critical metrics for performance?
Yeah, I'll show you that. So for batting, definitely, I will show you how I would go about creating, other than average and strike rate, how I would create another different scatter graph. So I would use boundary percentage and non-boundary strike rate. I'm going to open up a sheet now. So I'm just going to open up, and again, boundary percentage is far more real, and I think gives us more of an idea of what actually batters do. And then I put that against non-boundary strike rate. So the best strike rotators are really high on that graph. We know that winning the boundary count of matches leads to winning 85% of T20 games. So that's why boundaries are so important in T20 cricket. So having a metric that shows that is really important. So I'm going to bring that up now and what that looks like. So here we go. So it looks a bit messy. I'm just going to clear that up for you. So here we've got boundary percentage on the bottom, and we've got non-boundary strike rate on the left. If I was then to look at, it's really common in the middle overs. So let me go there. This is last year. The competition is in the 100. And let's go just the middle overs. So, for example, someone like Sam Hain is a really interesting one, because everyone goes, well, his average and strike rate is brilliant, right? He's one of the, because he bats at number 4 in every team, but he is so poor at hitting boundaries in the middle overs, and he's really difficult to bat with because he doesn't hit many boundaries, but he's really good at rotating strike, one of the best. He's, funnily enough, alongside someone like Joe Root. And again, interestingly, from the 100 last year, Phil Salt's here, which I'd expect him to be more to the far right. But again, someone like Pooran, he's like the perfect mix with Sam Hain, because he hits so many boundaries in the middle overs. If we filtered it just to spin, then we start to get, you see where Sam Hain is against spin, barely like 2% boundaries against spin in the middle overs, compared with a Tom Banton, who's up to almost a third of the balls he faced against spin in middle overs, he's going to hit a boundary. And so, because we know boundaries are so important, this is a really good way of using the metrics, and they're kind of a mix between performance and outcome. So it's something that I speak with Sam Hain a lot at the moment over the winter at Warwickshire, is how can we get Sam to move more right-hand side of this graph? because we know he's going to be in and we know that he's good at rotating the strike. But sometimes when we've got a wicket that's a 200 wicket, we don't want him rotating the strike. We want him to carry on going. So this is a really good scatter graph that I would use for batting. In terms of bowling, I think it's really simple. It's bowling strike rate, so the amount of balls per wicket, and then it's bowling economy. This is SA20 from this year, from the last 2 years, and this is just spinners. Again, let's go minimum 10 overs. And then you start to get, there's Noor Ahmed, his name in the database is Lakwano. So, but that's where he is. Funnily enough, Noor Ahmed was one of the best spinners. But then it gives us an idea. Well, look where Theekshana was in the SA20. Very, he's not really containing compared to other spinners because he's above the average line in terms of economy, and he's also not taking many wickets. Now, that's quite a weird result for Theekshana because he's one of the best in the world, but that's interesting to note. That was his performance in the SA20. Again, you look at Liam Livingston at the top. Yes, he might take wickets better than the average of spinners across the competition SA20 for the last couple of years, but look how expensive he is. He's going at 10.5s and over. So again, it's less about lists and stats. It's all about understanding the relationship between the two metrics and how they work in tandem. Because spinners, if you just use bowling average, well, that's not going to tell you much. But if you use the relationship between, are they containing spinners? Are they expensive or not? Or do they take wickets? You can see how successful Jonathan Ferreira has been here at the bottom left. As someone that hasn't really bowled much over the last couple of years, how much better he's got at bowling. And this year was a really good sign of that. And I suppose you could argue that's because the SA20 started preparing more spinning wickets. So you could start to match that up with your insights of what you thought of the game. And that's kind of the best bit of brand analysis, matching up the emotional stuff and what we see, but also what the data suggests.
James, like truly, honestly, it's so interesting because we never had this thought that so much data analysis goes behind it. Because as you showed us, and data, I think, gives you more accurate results depending upon the past performances, what could happen. So I think this.
I think the reality is the coaches that I work with are very emotional, and sport is very emotional. Like, okay, let's be real. Rohit Sharma's not been playing very well. The amount of people that are now saying he needs to be axed from the India team. But if you looked at the data, he might be overperforming compared to every other Indian batter. And so you got to try and match up, right? Well, here's Rohit's career. This is how good we know he can be. This is what the data is telling us to do. Where do our decisions lie? It's probably in the middle. And the reality is he's probably going to come over to England and play the Test series. And that's probably the right decision because of what he could do and how but we've got to try and match up the coach's emotional opinion, the coach's non-objective opinion with the data, which is the objective opinion, and then go from there.
Right. So we get some quantifiable and proof data that gives us a more better decision making, right?
Yes.
So okay, that was really exciting. And there's some question, like another one which is very common among the learners, that how do you suggest, like many people do have an interest in cricket analytics. So they have two broad questions. The first is coding really a very necessary part? Do you require it to become a cricket analyst? And the second is, how do you suggest someone or the practice roadmap to become a successful cricket analyst?
I think coding is not needed to be a great cricket analyst, but understanding how your data is structured and doing the coding helps you get a better understanding of the data. So I would say, no, you don't need to code, but I think it's also a really good way into the industry because unfortunately the cricket industry, whether we like it or not, is based around relationships and communication, and the coding gets you into the conversation for the more opportunity, whatever that might be, and creates a pathway. So I'd love to say you don't need to code to be a cricket analyst, but it's more important than I think we'd all like to admit. In terms of the pathway of being a good cricket analyst, it's just making mistakes and getting and analyzing the data and practicing it and showing it to people. If I like the amount of presentations that I've given in terms of showing it to my peers, in terms of I have mates in the industry and I go, right, I'm creating this dashboard or I'm creating this graph. Can I show you? And then they'll tear it apart and tell me how rubbish it is. And then I go and make it better. Like, I see lots of people posting on LinkedIn. That's great. You know, you've got data in Cricksheet. If you've got a Power BI account or a Tableau account, go and start visualizing it. Put it on LinkedIn or send it to people and get feedback. And also, I think what's really important is explaining it to people that don't understand cricket, because that's going to really help you with your explanation. If you're explaining it to your mates who already know what boundary percentage is, or who already know what batting strike rate is, showing them a graph with boundary percentage and batting strike rate, they'll know, yeah, sure, great, the best batter's the top right. But if you showed it to, I don't know, a mate who has no idea, who doesn't watch cricket at all, and they go, well, what's this? And then it's lets you understand, right, how do people read your graphs? What do they gravitate towards? Do I need a color scheme there? What is my color scheme saying? And realistically, I'm just creating visuals. The data skill and understanding the nuance comes with my knowledge of cricket, which I'm sure lots of people on this call have, in terms of the nuance and the understanding of, you know, the way spinners bowl, the sort of spin, overspin, underspin. That's great knowledge, but that can be added to the data. And everything that I do is with numbers, backed up by numbers. And that's the difference compared to a coach. The coach can say things like, oh, he's getting more overspin on the ball. Okay, but that's my job now, to find a number or a way of tracking spin or overspin to then back up or tell him he's talking absolute rubbish. But that's kind of where we're going with it. I think that's the pathway. It's get it wrong. Put your stuff on LinkedIn, trial and error. Create Tableau dashboards on Tableau Public or Power BI dashboards and Power BI Public, and show it to people, because there's no point you sitting in your room and just doing all this secret work, and then your first interview and you never shown your dashboard or your data to someone, and someone goes, sorry, what's that? And you never practice explaining it, and you never practice going through it, and you never practice highlighting the areas that you want to highlight. The storyboarding of the data is really important. So that's my biggest thing, is go and practice it. And that's what I've done with my intern last year. Yash, God love him. The amount of times we had to practice him explaining his dashboard to me, even though I knew, and I was asking the really annoying question, I knew what the dashboard meant, but I was prodding him and poking him, because that's what the coaches are like. You have to assume everyone knows nothing, and then you build up their knowledge through the storyboarding of it all.
Completely, James. I think what you said are very essential, because practicing making mistakes is something that makes you create, because you learn where we could make mistakes and then you improve it. So learners do keep these things in mind, because this is what from an expert in his field, and this is surely going to help you. So like for the time constraint, I'll go with one more question. So it's related to IPL, and as you know, there's an IPL fever going in India right now. So there is something to IPL. So the question is like, we have seen IPL scores rise significantly from 180 to 220, being considered a winning total few years ago. Right now it's 250 plus. So that's also not safe for today's matches. So what do you think, what key factors, whether, tactical, technological, or data driven, what has contributed to this shift? Like 180 to 220 was 10 years or 5 years back. Before that, it was like 150. Now even 250 is not a safe score. So what do you think, what has contributed in this change?
I think I will give an example in England, and then you can all make your own minds up about what India are trying to do with T20 cricket. In 2021, we created a new competition called the 100, and we were here to attract new fans, and we wanted lots of sixes, big boundaries, high scoring games to increase viewership and audience. As someone that worked in the county game and not in the 100, that was then copied by lots of counties, and they started creating wickets that were flatter, harder, faster, higher scoring, because they knew that more boundaries, more excitement, more carnage would hopefully bring more fans to their stadium. I'm not saying that's what India are doing with the IPL and their wickets that they're creating, because I'm sure it's far more nuanced than that. But I think there is a general thought and, I suppose, idea or theory that if we have more boundaries, more excitement, we're going to bring more fans in, and we're going to hopefully bring more viewership to the game. It's interesting because we, as someone that works in cricket in the change rooms, we have the IPL on, and the cricket players are watching the IPL while they're training. And the amount of cricketers that go, I can't watch the IPL anymore. 250 versus 260 is just boring. and it's fascinating seeing the people that, like, I'm sure if you put a game that had 130 versus 130, all of these cricketers would love to watch how someone closes out the chase or whatever in an awkward, like, stop-starty game, because they already love cricket. But we want to see, but lots of new fans want to see the massive sixes, the huge boundary, like, so I don't think India need to get more cricket fans. I'll be quite honest, right? I don't know why they're doing it. I think the stadiums will still sell out whether you have 160 pitches or 250 pitches. In England, it's a bit different. We need more people to come and watch cricket, please. But I think there's a bit of a marry up. I would say that I think that's where the game's going. It will be magical when we see the first 300 get scored. It will be fascinating to see who does it. It's probably going to be Sunrisers Hyderabad, with Travis Head hitting 150 from one end, probably. But it's, or Abhishek Sharma, whoever. But I think that's the reality of it. I think there's a big thing around more boundaries, more, I suppose, carnage in that sense will equate to more fans. Whether I think that's the right thing to do or not, I don't know. But yeah, I also think from a player point of view, there's a massive pressure to now hit boundaries all the time. And so when I speak to the people like Dan Mousley, who was in the 100 this year and just made his England debut, he now feels a massive pressure to constantly be the biggest hitter. Whereas 2 or 3 years ago, there was massive value in him being able to rotate the strike on trickier pitches because that's what he's playing on. But now he's playing on flatter wickets. And he's like, right, I can't just knock it about now. I've got to hit sixes all the time.
Right. So I think it's the both ways, right? Because players see the game, that's a skill game they see in terms of skills. Whereas we audience, because we like, sixes thrashed, boundaries, that makes it more thrilling. So I think it takes there, right? And also we have got a prediction, Lennis, from James about this high scoring game going for 300. So let's see, James.
Sure, it's got to happen, hasn't it? We've had 280 already, haven't we? It's only a matter of time.
That's good. So like, I think because from your expertise, I think we will be soon seeing it very soon. And everyone will be thrilled because that gives them. Okay. Very important question. And I think we'll just end it after that. So what are the major tools used in cricket analytics and how they help in making analysis in cricket? Like if you could give examples of some tools and what actually they do.
Yeah, so the biggest thing is you've got to learn some data visualization. So that's Power BI, Tableau, Google Look. Just have a skill set in a program, whatever that might be. And then you can transfer those skills when you're ready. So, for example, I'm very confident in my Tableau skills. I'm looking to transfer those skills into Power BI, but it takes time, right? It's like learning how to read. You've got to learn where all the new buttons are, but you need to be able to visualize your data sets. Because otherwise, sending people Excel tables or tables in general, it gets pretty tiresome by the end of it. So learn to make your data engaging to people. And again, it comes back to practice, sharing it with people. So that's the major tool, data visualization. I'd like to think that in time, we're getting more skills around data science in terms of creating models, things like league translation models in terms of if someone scores 100 in the Vitality Blast, what does that mean? How good is that compared to an IPL 100? How good is that compared to a Big Bash 100? I think there's going to be more work around the weighting of scores and the context. We just need to get better at capturing that context data. So if you're someone that really loves the data science aspect of cricket and you have a skill set in that, and that's writing code through R, Python, Matplotlib, whatever, then there will be avenues to work through that in terms of predictive modeling, weighting of scores is really, I think coaches now are starting to understand the weighting of scoring is really important against certain bowlers as well. So if someone scores 100 in a test, if it's against Zimbabwe, a test 100 means far less, with all due respect to Zimbabwe, compared to 100 versus England or India or Australia. So the weighting of, so that's where I think it's going. And I think tools wise, having really good coding skills to create that code to weight certain scores will be really interesting. And I'd like to see more of that done in cricket.
Sure. And I think from your insights, our learners would try and they could be, talking to you someday in the future that, okay, James, I had taken the session with you and that's where I got inspired.
Yeah, so I know there is a company called Intelligent Cricket that have weighted average and weighted runs. So, for example, we had Kookaburra games in our county cricket so we use a Kookaburra ball, far less wickets, batting tracks were flat, and someone scored something like 200, and their weighted runs actually brought it down to 30 because of how poor the bowling was, the ball quality, the wickets, the amount of run, and I'm not saying players will hate me for saying this because it's like, well, hang on a minute, I scored 200 runs. Why are you taking that away? It's like, yeah, but in the grand scheme of things, that was probably about a 30 on a normal wicket. So that's the good stuff that can help contextualize cricket and help coaches understand, okay, yes, they scored a double hundred, but that kind of doesn't mean that much in the grand scheme of what everything else says.
I think it gives you something to back up and
yes,
whatever you're saying. So you have an concrete data that, okay, this is our data is showing. And I said it was the last question, but just one because it was related to what you answered and what our learners also want. So what do you think, what is the future growth in cricket analytics? How is it going to change? And what competition could increase in future? Because as you said, it's a very new and a niche segment right now. So what could be the future of this?
I think I'd like to see predictive modeling in cricket more. However much I'd love to say cricket analytics is new, it's not new for lots of teams and lots of countries. It's just new for the ones that haven't used it before. And I say that because I hear too many stories of franchises, cricket teams that just don't even think about data analytics around their recruitment or processes. And it's not a fact of not funding it properly. It's a fact of you just didn't know how important that could be. So I would love to say that we get more proper data-informed decision-making across every franchise global league. That would be the biggest change, because you'll see lots of recruitment around, for example, franchise cricket, where you're just like, how is this player being picked? And unfortunately, I've been listening to too many conversations where the owner wants to sell more tickets, so we need to get this big name, but they're replacing a big name bowler with a big name batter. It's like, well, that's completely turned around your whole recruitment strategy. That's silly, but that's reality of where cricket's at in terms of their decision making. The people that have the power don't necessarily have the information, so it's about trying to. That's what I'd like to see change.
So I think we will also be excited, and our learners would be excited too, because you inspired them for a career in cricket analytics, and I think they will surely pursue this. And it was really, really great, James, that you gave us your time. And I thought that because while I was in this session, I couldn't take my eyes off the screen because it was so interesting, like seeing players whom we have seen, like, as you said, Joe Root, Barrister, Dhoni, Kohli, but then seeing their statistics, how they're playing, how do we place them, that was really exciting. And I hope our learners have also liked it. So thanks a lot, James, for giving us this perspective of the game. It was really a pleasure to have you here.
No problem. Thank you.
So learners, I think you had a really exciting session with James today. And we hope that in future also, James could give us some time and we could come up with more exciting stuff so that you also get more inspired. And we hope that James also liked this session, because, taking session and inspiring the next generation is, I think, what every people or every experts like. So once again, thank you so much, James. Thank you for giving your time, your expertise, and your insights. We are really grateful to you. And just for the learners, we have also shared the feedback form. So, do let us know how do you like this session, because this will help us. And also, if we contact James in future, we could also know what else would you like to see, so that he could give us some time with that. So do fill up the feedback form. It will be really great. And once again, so you have an interesting match going on right now, CSK versus RCB. So whatever you have learned here, try to visualize in that form. I think you would enjoy the game more. So I would not take much of your time. Go and enjoy the match, and also keep these insights in mind, what James has given you. A very good night to one and all. And once again, thank you, James, for joining us. And we really hope to see you soon again on our forum.
Later.
Thank you so much, James. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ninjas. And a very good night, a very good weekend, and keep learning. This is Supratim from the 10X Club, signing off.